How we doing, guys? All right, good. Can you tell we're still trying to figure things out, which is fun? I think that's a part, honestly, legit, my favorite part of all of this. And people have asked me, like, DJ, you've done vision nights, we've done pre-launch, we've done soft launch. Like, what's the whole point of all these soft? Like, why not just start the church? And I'd be like, guys, we've definitely started the church. But this gives us some extra grace, right? Because when you're like, oh, it's a soft launch, it's cool. If they mess up, it's fine. That's good. It's good. Way to go. Like, it's fine. This is my favorite part of having people step into leadership and new places and new spaces and figuring things out. I legit told my wife, like, after we're done planting this church, like, give it a year or two, and I'm like, let's go plant another one. Like, the fun of getting everything together and problem solving and gathering people and starting new things is something I'm like, this is so stinking fun. Can you guys see? Like, when you look, can you read? We could flip on the light. Yeah, I want to flip on the lights. I'll give everyone a little bit brighter. But I'm excited. Again, the whole point of this series and the sermon series that we've been in with Only the Strong is this concept that, again, that we need the strength of the Lord no matter where we're at in our walk with God. We need it. And I wanted to give a little bit of a celebration and update to kind of what the strength of the Lord has done in and through us, because I'm going to be honest with you, on my own strength, this would have been a disaster. Like, starting a church and doing all this stuff would have been super hard, and it's been hard. It's also been, again, a blast. So all of us that have kind of called Storyline Church home, this is a little bit of what God has done, and he's done it in a lot of different ways. The stories and the people sharing up here is to share a little bit what God's starting to do in our hearts even more and more and more. And I get it that a lot of these things that have been done were done before Storyline Church, but that's the power of the church. That's why we wanted to continue bringing a community together so that stories like this could happen and people could be revealed to who God is in their life. Another way, though, of seeing how God moves is financially. This is actually, when you look biblically, to be able to see how God shows up in these types of things is one of the really cool, most practical, applicable ways of going like, dang, God, you're doing some cool stuff. And so, since January 6th is the date that Danae and I were like, we are going to start this church. We are for sure going to do that. Since January 6th, we have raised $130,634 towards this church plant. That's cool. That's really, really cool. That's a lot of conversations with a lot of you out there kind of casting vision of like, hey, what's going to happen? One of the other cool parts of this is churches coming alongside us too. CFC in Nampa, they gave us $20,000 to get started. The Assemblies of God Network, they gave us $30,000 to get started. We've had a couple other churches like Refresh gave us $1,500. Change Life gave us $5,000. And then a lot of you have stepped up and started giving too. But isn't that really cool to know that the churches are gathering around us to see another church launch instead of like competition? Because sometimes we hear the opposite of those things, and I want you to know, like the church in this valley, the capital C church in this valley, it's stinking cool. And we've had so many things come alongside us. All the pipe and drape here was donated. That's about $5,000 worth of pipe and drape. The chairs were donated. That's at least $10,000, which, by the way, who doesn't love purple chairs, right? You got to love these purple. That's God's color right there. That's royalty right now. You are sitting in a royal chair right now. Them purple chairs. I love them. Someday down the road, like 10 years down the road, we're going to be like, do you remember when we had purple chairs? And you're like, I remember that day when we had purple chairs. They were ugly, but they were awesome. All right? And so this has been really cool again, just to see how God's shown up from an income standpoint. And I made a pact with God early on. I said, God, I'm not going to be concerned with finances, and I'm not going to be concerned with numbers. I said, I don't want to be a pastor that's only worried about butts in the seat and how much offering has been given. I don't want to be that guy. But I also wanted you to know I'm not immune to that either. I know that if I'm not careful and if I don't surround myself with the right people, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to be worried about butts in the seat, how many people showed up, because my pride's going to be attached to that. And then I'm going to worry about how much money's coming in so that way we all get paid what we need to get paid and, things happen. And again, it's really an ego issue. It really is. And I know as a pastor, I am not immune to that. So I want you to know as a church that I have gathered myself around people like Kent. Kent is amazing. Amazing. Kent is amazing for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons that Kent's amazing is going to be one of our elders and is one of our elders is because he is not afraid to tell me, hey, TJ, guess what? You're being stupid. Right, Kent? He's not afraid of it. He's not afraid to call me out and say, hey, you know what? You told me that you weren't going to be concerned about these things, and now all we're doing is talking about finances. He told, and I've given him permission straight up. Hey, Kent, if I start doing this, call me out. Same thing with Justin, one of our elders. We're building our elder team as we come along because I believe in accountability, and I believe in things, again, the reality that I am not immune to any of these types of concepts because I have ego. Raise your hand if you have ego. If you're not raising your hand, I want to meet you because I don't know how you do it. I don't know. What do you do? How do you not have ego? That's impressive. All right? We all have ego. On the flip side of this, we've spent $111,872, so that's pretty cool. All right? Which is amazing how expensive it is to plant a church, even with all the donations that we've been given with chairs and pipe and drape and things like that. I mean, we spent $40,000 on carts. How sexy is that? Yeah, we bought a cart, everybody! Woo! That's not really that exciting, I get it. But it does make things easier when we buy carts and we roll them in and out and set up tear down church and things like that. Technology, kid check, all the different things that we've been able to spend. Not a penny of that $111,000 has gone to any salaries. And the reason I want to mention that is, to this point, not a single person has been paid. Not me, not Danae, not Josh, not any volunteer in this place. This is all just to get it launched off. How cool is that? That's God's faithfulness, right? And that's not me tooting the horn or anything like that. I just want to show you and see and have you guys see kind of what's going on in and through this. Again, a little bit more of a financial update as we go along. I just want you to know kind of some of the things I know we have coming up. Actually, we've already spent that first $4,000 2 days ago before I made these slides, or after I made these slides. We are sending out 12,500 invitations to families that are about a 5-mile square radius to this building right here. That piece right there makes me really excited. It's a really cool little mailer flyer type thing that invites them to come and hang out. Those are going to, for lack of better words, hit mailboxes September 2nd through September 12th. And likely many of you that are anywhere near this region are going to get an invitation. And then we're going to also have other invitations that you guys could take and do different things. Actually, next weekend, we're going to have a really fun weekend. We're going to call it Invitation Sunday. So we start to build a little bit more momentum as we go along. Because pretty much this team, for the most part, is the team that's been helping set up and tear down and things like that, which is the point of this. It's the whole point of why we're doing what we're doing. It's the whole point of why we're in the series we're in, is to build courage and to hear stories of other characters in the Bible that have gone through hard times and to be able to see how God's, again, His strength has provided throughout all of it. But you see that we have that grand opening celebration. We'll have some bouncies, food, and stuff like that. The other big piece is the live stream. This is a huge front door. Most people will check out a live stream or what a sermon's like before they will ever step foot in a church. And so we need to get that up to scuff. And then, of course, I want to care for this school well. If we can't care for this school well, we're not going to care for the community very well, all right? So this is our forefront right here. This is, for lack of better words, the front line is really caring for these teachers well, really caring for the students at the school really well, not just earning a place so that we have a good relationship with them, so that they know who Christ is in their life because of who we are as a church. That's our heart. And then, of course, we have a lot of other things that will come down the road, but those are the things first and foremost. And when it comes to this idea of generosity, I get it. It's very taboo when it comes to the church. I walked into the church and we're talking about giving. I want you to change your mentality on that. I'm going to challenge you to change your mentality on that. That it is not something that God wants for you. It's what something God wants for you, or from you, but what He wants for you. That generosity is something that when we walk it out in our lives, it makes us better Christ followers. And when I look at scriptures like this in Matthew chapter 6, it says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." One of the greatest verses in the Bible when it comes to this idea of generosity. I'm not just talking about financial generosity. I'm also talking about your time, your talents, and your treasure. And so I'm going to start to challenge those of you that are calling Storyline Church home. Would you begin giving faithfully? Would you begin giving to the point where we could start to set a budget and start to know a little bit more of what it looks like moving forward? Because right now, everything's been very sporadic. A big gift here, a little bit gift here, things like that. If you're calling Storyline Church home, make it a reoccurring gift so that I know what we want to do, because I want to be financially wise as we move along, all right? We're never going to be kind of housebroken in this, but there's 4 ways to give. You have the online piece. You go online. You could download the app. It's easy to do right there. In person, there's a box right out at Guest Services. It says Tithes and Offerings. You could slip it in there. We have a counting team that Michelle's going to be doing. It's really, really cool. And then you can mail it. If you're old school, you could P.O. Box 190282, and you can mail it to us. And so those are some ways you could take a picture of that if you want to. All that is online too. If you're like, I didn't get that P.O. Box, you go to storylinechurch.tv, and it's all there, all right? But I want you guys to start considering, again, if you call Storyline Church home, what it would look like for you to start giving and tithing, because God wants to do something, and he wants to do it through you. So that's my challenge. So again, we're in this series, Only the Strong, talking about Ruth. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I want to dive into, and I think, again, Josh, where'd you go, Josh? Thank you, you're back there. I was looking at Rihanna, I'm like, where are you? All right. Hey, thank you for the courage to share that story. Thank you for that courage, man. Being someone who has also lost a kiddo early on, like, it hit right here, because I had those same emotions, like, what the heck, God? Like, if you're so good, why would that happen? And this story today is going to hit on that. We're going to talk about specifically the story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz, and it's a huge story. It's 4 chapters long, and so it's really hard to encapsulate everything that happened in 4 chapters and what we're going to talk about today. So you have some homework, and that is, I want you to go home this week and read the book of Ruth, all right? It's 4 chapters long. It's not that long. It'll take you a little bit, but it'll be able to kind of get a little bit more of what's going on. And instead, I'm going to kind of do my best to recap it, and then we'll make some points and talk about it and things like that. But that's my challenge to you. But Ruth is written in the book, Ruth, and it's written during the time of the judges. What were the judges? Back in this day and age, Israelites, the whole nation, they were losing their junk, all right? They were not following after God, and so God sends these judges. But all along this way, people are following their own path. They're doing their own thing. They have no respect for other people, and they have no respect for God. And because of that, you'll feel, even in the tension of all of what we're about to read, that God is just like, hey, you need to get your junk in order. You need to get your junk in order. And the story of Ruth and the story of Naomi and Boaz is a really cool story in the midst of what happens when everything else seems to be falling apart, but what happens when you focus in on who God is and his strength. And so turn with me to Ruth chapter 1. We're going to be in verses 11 through 13, and then we're going to kind of pop around all throughout this kind of story. But at this point, I'm going to catch you up for the first 10 verses, that is. And that is, Naomi is married to a guy named Elimelech. Everyone say Elimelech. All right? You could say it different ways if you have a better accent than I do, but that's the way I say it, Elimelech. They have 2 sons, and what's going on right now, in the area of Judah where they live, there is a severe famine, so bad that it makes them need to move. They're like, you know what? We can't stick around. We need to go somewhere else. And so they pick up their 2 sons, and they move to a place called Moab. Everyone say Moab. All right, cool. While they get there, not too long after they get there, Elimelech dies. So Naomi is left now with just these 2 sons, kind of like at this place of like, what am I supposed to do? I'm out of my hometown, and now I'm at this other place where, yes, there's no famine anymore, but I don't have my husband. And so they move along in life like many of us do when we face hardship. They just kind of, okay, we're just going to keep pressing through. The 2 sons, one marries a lady named Orpah. Everyone say Orpah. Not Oprah, but Orpah, all right? I can't tell you how many times when I read that, my mind just like, Oprah. Oh, no, not Orpah. Orpah, that's how you say it. And then another girl named Ruth. About 10 years into it at this point, both of Naomi's sons, so the wife of, the husband of Orpah and the husband of Ruth, they die. Dead. So now at this point, Naomi has lost her husband and lost her 2 sons. And she gets to this place where she's like, you know what? I have nothing left to give. I need to move back to my hometown in Judah. I need to move back there. But the problem is she now has these 2 daughter-in-laws, and she feels a sense of responsibility because, well, they're her responsibility. And so she's not totally sure what to do. So she says to them, you know what? Why don't you guys stay? You guys just go find yourselves another husband and you stay. And they start to argue back and forth, and you know, they don't want to leave Naomi, but but they just don't know what to do. And that's kind of where we pick up the story, okay? So look at verse 11. It says, "But Naomi said, 'Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had another husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grow up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me.'" Which again, I don't know about you, and again, it's a bit like Josh's story up here where it's like, God, why would you do this? That's what's going on here. But at the same time, she has this, again, angst to want to care for her daughter-in-laws. I put it this way, how we respond in hard times is often an indication of our true character. Have you realized this yet? That our innate reaction to things is often a response to what's actually going on in our heart. Other places in the Bible says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Our actions take place. And this is an indication right here of a little bit of her heart. I love Naomi's heart in this instance. I read this piece in Ruth 11:13, more of a heart of like, ladies, I don't have anything left to give, but I want you to be successful. I want you to have a family. Don't be like me. Go ahead. I release you. That's the heart I read. Not like she's bitter and like, you know what, just go. Just leave me. All right? That's not how I read it. Now, I guess you could read it that way, but I don't think that's her heart. And you could see it in her heart other places. So it's kind of cool. Right off the bat, the heart of Naomi is not poor me. It's, no, go ahead. Leave. But you could still sense a piece of bitterness, which I love because that's authentic, isn't it? It's authentic. So I want to ask you, what are your reactions when things get hard? Because again, this is an indicator of kind of where you're at spiritually too. Do you tend to go, come on, God, where are you at? You know? Not that there's anything wrong with that. We all have moments of like, God. Or is it also, you know what? This is stinking hard. And it feels like, God, what's going on? But you know what? I'm still going to push in. I'm still going to trust you. I know that for me, if I'm not careful, when I get angry and when like things get hard, I tend to be a guy that's like, I take my toys and go home kind of guy. Anyone else that's kind of a little bit like that? Where it's like, all right, fine, you don't want to do this? I'm not playing anymore, and I'm gone. That's something that my wife and I, Danae and I, we've had to work through a lot. Specifically, we've been married 17 years now, so I'd like to think I'm a lot better at it than I was a while ago. And I know that I am, but I know there's also moments, and not that long ago, where Danae and I were kind of bickering and fighting with one another, and my first reaction all of a sudden was like, you know what, fine, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. And I started walking away, and she goes, don't take your toys and go home. And I'm like, dang it! Fine! What do you want to talk about then? Right? You know, the attitude. So I know that I'm still a work in progress when it comes to those things. I imagine you guys are too. But how do we respond when things get hard? You throw a fit. I love that you're shaking your head. Yep, that's me. Do you blame shift? That's a big one. I honestly, again, I think a lot of us, this one isn't my particular poison, but I've seen it a lot. And that is the first reaction when things get hard is you are a finger pointer. You look for someone else to point blame at right away instead of asking yourself, all right, what happened? What's missing? What did I want to have happen? And what's next? Those have been the foremost powerful questions in my marriage with Danae. What happened? Really, what did I want to have happen? What's missing? And now what's next? You should write those down. That's really good. I don't see a single person writing anything down. Why are you guys not writing this? Are you that smart that you don't know? Jim, no, I'm just teasing you, all right? No, but you guys should be writing this. This is why I want you to bring your Bibles. This is why I want you to bring notes, all right? Because I want you writing these things down. I promise you won't remember this stuff later on, right? What happened? What did I want to have happen? What's missing? What's next? What happened? What did I want to have happen? What's missing? And what's next? I tell you what, those 4 questions will save a lot of heartache in a marriage. It's going to save a lot of heartache with your coworkers. It's going to save a lot of heartache with your kids. It's going to save a lot of heartache anytime you have conflict in life. Because what happened? What did I want to have happen? What's missing? And what's next? Is a powerful way to move past conflict super fast. Super fast. And so, again, we get to the story here. At this point, they're arguing, go. No, I want you to stay. So eventually, Orpah decides, I'm going to leave. But she didn't want to leave, all right? So it's kind of cool in the relationship with her mother-in-law. Both these ladies, Naomi must have been a phenomenal mother-in-law. That's just a really cool thing to think. Neither of these ladies wanted to leave her, all right? But Ruth decides she's going to stay. She's going to stay. It doesn't matter what she says. And Naomi goes, fine, I realize that you are actually going to stay. So Ruth and Naomi, they head to Judah. And when they encounter the women at Judah, again, this is Naomi's hometown. So it's not a very big town. They would have all recognized Naomi off the bat and were like, what? It's been 10 years since we've seen each other. So they probably would have been pretty excited. And they would have been stoked to see Naomi. And so that's where we come up on the story. So look at verses 20 and 21. So Naomi, again, sees the women. Don't call me Naomi. What a greeting, by the way. Naomi, so good to see you. Oh my gosh. No, don't even call me Naomi. Not oh, it's good to see you too. All right, so you can see there's something going on in her heart. A little bit of bitterness, perhaps. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Again, whenever reading the Bible, if you're new to your faith, here is a really cool way to read the Bible. All right, don't just read chapter after chapter, and the more chapters you read, the more holy you feel, okay? Because that's actually not a really good way to read the Bible, all right? I was once released of this early on in my Christian walk with God, is that I would literally think the more I read, the more holy I was, all right? I wouldn't remember a word of what I read, but I just felt more holy because I read 5 chapters instead of just 1 chapter. And it was this sense of if I just read more, I was a better person. Anyone ever stuck in that rendition? Right, raise your hand if you've ever been there before. I know there are more of you. I know there are a lot more of you, okay? By the way, I love when we raise our hand because it makes everyone feel that you're not alone, all right? Isolation is one of the ways the enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy. You'll find out that more people struggle with the same thing you struggle with. And when we raise our hands, just own it, okay? Because I promise you, you're not the only one in the room. I promise you that, all right? But what was I saying? But that piece of understanding, again, that what we go through, the hardship that we deal with, the Lord is behind it. So when you read something like this, you're not alone in it. So again, when you read the Bible, a best practice, don't just read it once. Read the same section, but read it in a different tone. So she might be saying, no, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. She might have more of that tone. Or it might be no, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. The Lord has afflicted me. If he were here, why not have my back? You could read it more that tone. It's really actually a super fun, powerful way to read the Bible because there's totally different tones depending on how we do it. Now, we don't know the tone. We just don't. We don't know how she does it. So I'm going to project on what I think is the tone, but you guys get to do your own homework, all right? Because that's a big part of this. You got to figure out what you think. I think there's probably some anger here. I think when we read this, and she's saying this to the people, why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. I think there's a little bit of anger, but what I've realized in my almost 42 years being on this earth is that anger is a secondary emotion. Have you figured this one out yet? Rarely is someone just angry. There's always something else behind anger. Well, what do you mean? Well, a lot of times grief is behind anger, which is certainly the case here. If she did say this more from an angry tone, of course there's grief. She lost her husband and 2 sons and everything she knew to move back to a place that she hasn't been in 12 years. Of course there's grief. There's probably shame, a secondary emotion. What do you mean by shame? She went away full. She had a family, and she comes back with nothing. In the Israelite community, to be a Hebrew at this point, of course, having property, having family, that is wealth. So of course there's shame there. There's and then there's overwhelm. No doubt she's feeling overwhelmed. She feels a sense of responsibility, specifically now for Ruth, because her son is dead, so she's responsible for Ruth. And they don't have anything. And Ruth doesn't even have a husband. He doesn't have kids. So now I have to take care of her, and I have to take care of myself. Any of moms ever been there before? You were like, how am I supposed to take care of everyone? I'm falling apart. Okay, good. Sweet. No doubt she's anxious. Anger is a secondary emotion. Always. This is another great marital tip. When your spouse is angry with you, there's probably something deeper going on. When your children are angry with you, there's probably something deeper going on. When a coworker is angry with you, there's probably something deeper going on. This last week, Bryn, I asked permission from my kiddos before I tell stories about them. But Bryn had to do some labs. And she hates when she has to do labs, right? Who loves getting prodded with needles? No one, all right? So she hated it, and she knew. Usually we try to kind of surprise her just a little bit so she doesn't have to think about it too much throughout the day. But she had to stop taking one medication so that way it didn't kind of skew the labs. And so we had to tell her, hey, you're not going to take this medication because we're going to go in for labs. Well, that entire day, Bryn was just snapping at us and just like, and I wanted to be like, Bryn, what's wrong with you? But I knew right away that for her, that anger, what had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with Danae, had nothing to do with her siblings, had nothing to do with her going back to school or anything like that. It had to do with the fact that she was about to take these labs. And because of that, it gave me so much grace for her. I mean, I remember she snapped at me one thing, and usually as a dad, like respect is a big deal to me. Like I want to be respected. And so sometimes when my kids will snap, I'm like, hey, no, you don't talk to me like that. Anyone other dads, you do that, right? No, I'm the father here. You don't talk to me like that. But I didn't do that because I knew it had nothing to do with me. When we know that anger is a secondary emotion, and we could ask the next question, I wonder what's really going on here? That saves us from stepping in it, doesn't it? Where you're not like, well, and then you make it about you, and then it becomes a big fight about had nothing to do with you in the first place. Don't make that mistake. Anger is a secondary emotion, and Naomi, she's dealing with things likely here. And again, I am projecting right here. I just want you to know, nowhere in the Bible does it say she was angry. There's other ways you could read this, but I read it that way. All right? Cool part of this, though, is the Lord can handle our anger. The Lord can handle our anger. Isn't that a cool thing? To know that he gets to handle anything we bring at him. I love that. There's a cool place in Psalm. I don't think I have enough time to read it, so I'm going to give you some more homework. Psalm 13 through 19, and honestly, it's the whole psalm, where the psalmist is just lamenting to God. And when I say lamenting, he is like giving it to God. Like, you know, you should have been here for this, and when my enemies came to me, you should have done this, and he's just like, God, where were you? I've been faithful to you. I've done this to you. Where were you? Where are you? How could you? God can handle our anger. Doesn't that give you a little bit of like, so you could bring it to him. Hey, Jerry, you could bring him your anger. He could handle it. Derek, you can handle your anger. Lacey, you can handle it. God can handle what we bring at him. But here's the reality of this. It is hard to see his motives when it's messy. So there's this juxtaposition, well, he could handle these things, and we want to have this perspective that's beyond like the here and now, but it is hard. And I think this piece of understanding, okay, well, if it's hard, then there's grace. Again, well, the Lord knows there's secondary emotion to anger. So if it's hard, then again, he knows that. And so we won't always understand. We won't always understand his reasons, but we could trust in his goodness. You guys believe that? That we may not always understand what he's doing, but we can trust that he is good. And the things that we go through here on this earth, when we call ourselves Christ followers, when you confess with your mouth and you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, our hope is not here. It is in what's next. That's the powerful part of what we get to hope for, is that this life is temporary. What's next is eternal, and our joy is in that eternity. Remember, joy is not this like, oh, happy, 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 happy. That's not joy. Joy is happiness despite. It's having perspective that goes beyond the here and now into what God has for us in the next. And so when we go through hard things, which by the way, you're going to go through hard things. I bet you right now half this room is going through pretty stinking hard things. Our hope is not here. Our hope is what's next. And when we have that kind of perspective, we can say, God, you are good. When we lose 3 babies, we can say, yeah, God, you are good. I don't understand why you do the things you do, but you are still good. When we lose our jobs, God, you are still good. When we fight with our spouses, God, you are still good. When our kids are losing their minds and we don't know how to parent, God, you are still good, because it's not here, it's what's next. Our joy is in what's next. And so if you look at this next verse, Ruth 22, it says, so Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. This is one of the coolest parts in the story of Ruth and Naomi here, is that they go from Bethlehem, they move to Moab back to Bethlehem. This had to happen. It was a God-ordained thing to happen. If they didn't move back to Bethlehem, it messes up so many things that God has in store for the future, from David to Jesus. They had to do it. And that's the wild part when you read this story and God, why did you allow these things to happen? Because it was God-ordained to happen. So, from this part, Ruth, they get back to Bethlehem. They have nothing at this point, absolutely nothing. And so Ruth is like, hey, how about I go glean some barley? So they go and she walks behind people just gleaning whatever's left over. Boaz notices, hey, who is this lady? Boaz is the field owner, all right? Pretty cool that he notices Ruth right away, which I think is kind of pretty fun too, because there's definitely some like sparks that are happening at this point. Like the way I picture this, again, when I read it, it's like, hey, who's that girl? All right. And he asks the other workers there, hey, who's she? And so they all tell him, oh, well, that's Ruth. That's Naomi's daughter-in-law. She moved from Moab to here. Like they tell the whole story. And so then Ruth, she walks back to her mother-in-law, Naomi, who's back home after gleaning all day long. And of course, Naomi's excited. Hey, what happened? Like, where did you glean? What's going on? And she's like, oh, I went to the field of Boaz. And you could see Naomi's eyes go, oh, dang. You went to Boaz's field? What happened? Oh, well, he let me glean after all the workers. And then not only that, he shared some bread and wine vinegar with me. And Naomi's like, yeah, the way I picture it, she's like, matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. You guys know one, right? She's like, oh, I'm going to hook this girl up with Boaz. And so she lays out this plan. She lays out a phenomenal plan for Ruth. So let's look, Ruth chapter 3, 1 through 4. This part's really cool. It says, one day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash. Right, here's her plan. You ready? Tuned out, tune in. She says, wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down, note the place where he's lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he'll tell you what to do next. I remember the first time I read that, I was thinking, dang, that's pretty seductive. Like, to go uncover his feet? Like, what did that even mean? And if you do a little bit more study, that has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with being seductive. She's not trying to manipulate or anything. Naomi's wisdom here is crazy. And again, unless you read a little bit more background, which, by the way, I encourage you to get an NIV study Bible, because when you look at this, you can kind of read a little bit more detail. But you'll know that Naomi's wisdom is that she's an Israelite woman. Boaz is an Israelite man, but Ruth is a Moabite woman. So Ruth's customs have no similarity to the Israelite customs. And so she wouldn't know what it even meant to uncover his feet at all. Like, that would have been weird. But Naomi knew. And she goes, hey, if you go uncover his feet, he'll know what's going on. Her wisdom is profound because she knows that Boaz is a man of honor. And as a man of honor, by uncovering his feet, what she's saying to Boaz is that you are my guardian redeemer. You are legally responsible for me. When I uncover your feet and lay at your feet, I am submitting to your leadership. That's what she's saying to him. Well, we wouldn't know that. I mean, even here, unless you did the study, you wouldn't know that that's what it meant. But Boaz knew that that's what it meant. Ruth didn't know what it meant, but Boaz knew that's what it meant. Naomi's wisdom is profound. And what I think is so cool, where you feel like, maybe you don't have anything left to give. If Ruth didn't have a Naomi, she would never have a Boaz. Straight up, she would never have related to him. Boaz would never have felt the honor that he felt from Ruth. And so she was following customs. Look, there's nothing more engaging for a man than when he feels respected. And because of that, again, Naomi knowing that I've had a lot of people argue, well, no, men are visually, yes, of course, men are visually engaged in women. Men are. But when you look at 17 years of marriage, I'm going to be honest with you. My wife respecting me has more to do than me being even physically attracted right now to her. Of course, I'm still physically attracted, and both have to do with it. But I am, are there any super kids here? I am turned on when my wife respects me. Some of you are like, I have never heard a pastor talk like this. Welcome to Storyline Church, okay? Welcome. Welcome. This is real life, man. I want to talk about real stuff. I love it. And again, the cool piece is Naomi knew that. Naomi knew that Boaz was probably more turned on by respect than even physical, because back then, it wasn't the same as it is now. They wanted families. It was more about the size of their hips for men, for women. It was about bearing children and making generations after generation. That was more sexy than physical attraction, which is just kind of cool. And so again, no matter your age or stage of life, God has a purpose. And that's the cool piece where we see here in Naomi. That I think at one point she literally mailed it in. I think at one point she's like, no, I'm good to go. I don't need to do this anymore. I don't have anything left to give. And then this comes along, and her wisdom is what creates this moment for them. It was her wisdom. So if you're sitting here today and you're like, you know what? I don't even know if I have anything left to give. And I've been there before. Even at the age of 40, I remember a couple years ago, I was like, God, I feel like I've hit my peak. You ever been there before? I think that was called the midlife crisis for me. I'm like, is this all I have to give? Is this where I'm at right now? And I felt this sense of purposelessness. I know that I've talked to many, Danae and I are not there yet, but I've talked to many people where, that empty nest syndrome, where all of a sudden you're caring for all your kids and you have all this responsibility, taking them there, here, all these places, coaching their baseball, soccer, all the stuff that you do, and then they're gone and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing right now with my time? And you feel that sense of purposelessness. Or maybe when it comes to age, and at this point you've kind of felt, you know what, I have nothing left to give. Naomi had a lot left to give, and you have a lot left to give. No matter where you're at in life, you have purpose. And so, Ruth lays down, Boaz sees where she's at. He offers her his guardian redeemership, that legal, I am going to take care of you. But because he's a man of honor, he decides that and figures out that there's actually someone else closer than he is to that guardian redeemership. So he goes to this other guy and says, hey, do you want Ruth as your wife? Do you want to buy the lands? Do you want to take care of all of her stuff, essentially? And this other relative is like, I don't want to mix these two things. I don't want her. Which is kind of crazy, but at the same time, Boaz knew exactly what he's doing because he knew he wanted her. He knew it. And so even the way he does it, again, you have to go and read it yourself. It's a really cool story. The way he kind of presents it to this other relative is kind of like, do you want her? She comes with all this baggage, but you could take her. Only to get her. He always wanted Ruth. And so if you look at chapter 4, verse 13 through 17 says this. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and when he made love to her, I love that piece, by the way, too. I think words are very specific. It didn't say he had sex with her, okay? It said he made love to her. Isn't that cool? All the things that Ruth has gone through, too, he made love to her. I think that's super cool. And the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. And the women said to Naomi, praise be the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better than 7 sons, has given birth." And then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. And the women living there said, "Naomi has a son." And they named him Obed. And he was the father of Jesse and the father of David. If they didn't move back to Bethlehem, there would be no Obed, there would be no Jesse, there would be no King David, and about 30 generations later, there would be no Jesus. We never know what God is doing. And we may never understand his plans for our life. But God's plans are always bigger than my plans. They're always bigger. And so this morning, here's where I want to land. When I encounter hard times, where is my trust in God? Just an honest moment. Is your first reaction to shake your fist at him? Is your first reaction to say, "God, what is going on?" Is your first reaction to say, I don't know what's going on, but Lord, I know that you are good. And I want to share these stories as we launch this church, because every single person in this room relates to that question up there. We're building trust with our Savior. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's called relationship. And some of us, we haven't begun a relationship with him. We haven't begun really building that trust. Others of us, we're 40 years into a relationship with Jesus, and our trust is on a different level. But would you bow your heads and close your eyes? And the reason I do this is just to make it a personal moment between you and the Lord. Just between you and him. Would you bow your head and close your eyes? If this morning you are here and you're like, "I am struggling to trust the Lord. I am struggling," I want to pray over you. But I also believe that the Lord honors boldness. So if this morning, just still heads bowed and eyes closed, if you are struggling to trust in the Lord, would you raise your hand? I want to pray over you. Okay, lots of us. Okay, there's lots of us. So Father, you see hands. Lord, you know exactly what's going on. And despite the situations and the scenarios and things that we go through, Lord, we know that you are a big God, that you have amazing things in store. Lord, I pray that in moments like this right now, where maybe it took us like every energy, every effort to get into these doors this morning, to be able to sit down. Maybe we have no desire to be here, but Lord, you've been pounding our heart this morning, knowing that our relationship with you, Lord, needs to be deepened. Lord, I pray that this morning, whether we have never begun a relationship with you, Lord, I pray that in this time, in this moment, even right now, your word says we confess with our mouth, we believe with our heart that he is Lord, that you are Lord. It says we are saved. So Lord, if there's someone in this room right now that has never done that, Lord, I pray that they would even confess right now, Lord, you are God. I believe that you died for me. I believe that you rose again after 3 days and that you are King of kings and Lord of lords, and I want to follow you. I pray that they would confess that, not just with their heart, but with their mouth, and they would be saved. And then for every varying degree between that moment or anyone else that's the most holy of holies in this room, Lord, I pray that you would help us to see that you are a God that we can trust. That you are a God that shows up no matter what happens in life, no matter the scenarios or the situations that we go through, that you have a bigger plan for our lives. And in these moments where we don't know why you do the things you do, why is life so stinking hard, we can still say, God, you are good because you are good. I pray that in this moment now, that you would speak to our hearts. Help us to see that you are good. Help us to build our trust in you. Reveal to us, Lord, your goodness. In your word, I pray that you would reveal to it with our eyes wide opened, looking for moments where you are speaking throughout the day. Thank you for the example of Naomi. Thank you for Ruth. Thank you for Boaz. Thank you for just the hardship they were going through and how even thousands of years later, it's an encouragement to us today that it is in you that we are strong. It is in you that we can see your goodness despite the messiness around us. So Lord, work. In Jesus' name. Would you stand and let's worship just a little bit more and then we'll be done.